Welcome in. This is Roster Rescue episode number 3. If you want your roster rescued, jump into the community, scan the QR code, or join via the Patreon, patreon.com/allgas, or at ddfantasyfootball.com. And if you want a customized roster review, they are available on the website. Just put in the request, how you want it to be done. We'll give you a Google form you can fill out to customize how you want your review to be done by Shane, myself. It can be live, it can be recorded, but ddfantasyfootball.com can get you the roster review for any team that you would like. But for this week's episode, and we're going to do 5 of these, I'm going to start doing these weekly. I think there's too much demand for roster rescue. Every time I post a new thread or comment in there, there's 5 or 10 more that are posted. So I pick 5 random rosters from the community. Just go through high-level roster construction, team direction, look at some war, maybe find some strategic advantages based on the format. So the first one this week this is from Dr. B. Harris. And I'm going to put in the chat what Dr. B. Harris said about his team. So this is a 12 by 12. It is 32 roster spots, 6 point per passing touchdown. And everybody can see it in here. So what we have scoring-wise is it is 1.2 RB PPR, so that's interesting. It's best ball, 0.1 point per carry, 2 PPR for tight ends, and it is a 0.5 first down bonus with start to tight ends. Big play bonuses, I'm pretty much going to ignore those for most leagues. I mean, maybe they matter when you're deciding between one player and another, but in terms of like the war, it doesn't really change things. So first thing I always do, go down, look at the settings. What's cooking, good looking, that is the name of this league. You can see the basic settings, 12 by 12. Here on the pie chart, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers. There's the start 2 tight ends right there. 3 flexes, a super flex, and then 20 bench. So exactly like he described it, 12 by 12, 32-man rosters. I always like to look at this, the number of players that are rostered at each position. And it just, before you get into the war, before you start looking at the scoring specifics, just kind of gives you a high-level view at maybe what is available, how the rest of the league is roster constructing. I note that even in 32-man rosters with 12 teams, there's only 63 QBs rostered. So I don't want to say that's not a lot, but it's probably right around average, which means there's probably some opportunity to get some backups. Not saying we definitely want to play a specific quarterback strategy, but 63 is on the lower end. Anybody that's watched the first couple episodes, 63 has been on the lower end. We've seen some in the high 60s, even into the 70s. Tight end, 63. So with a start 2 tight end, this number is typically going to be in the 40s or 50s, but here it's almost 2 per team. So if you think about 2 tight ends per NFL team are rostered, meaning every backup tight end basically is rostered. Some teams you're rostering 3 tight ends, teams that just have kind of a clustered mess of tight ends. All those guys are picked up and rostered. And then as you see, this RB number, I don't want to say that's super low, but again, it's a little bit lower. Sometimes you see this number in the 115, 120 range. So these 2 numbers are lower, and it's probably because that tight end number is higher. 139 for receivers isn't crazy. It's still wild that teams roster 12, 13, 14 receivers per team. But you see this in almost every league when you get in the season, and maybe it's because we're in February. You get in the season, people just start picking up any roster receiver that's scoring points. But when you get to the offseason, it feels like very, very much overkill. Because there's going to be another 20 to 25 receivers that jump into the NFL this year via the draft, plus UDFAs. Like, there's just no way this number can get over 150. So probably 20 to 30 to 40 of the rostered receivers are guys you could cut because they're literally the same that you'll be able to pick up off waivers. So I was looking at the scoring. So we have 6 minus 2 for passing TDs. Here's you see all those bonuses. The 40-yard completions aren't that crazy. It's only half a point for the 40-yard completions, etc. But I think that covers the scoring. So let's take a look here at the war. And I always look at the 3-year average for the war just to kind of get a baseline of each position. And first thing, we know it's start 12. So in a start 12, And what he says about the league is it's best ball, and there's all these crazy bonuses or boosts for the non-quarterbacks. So right there, I don't want to say it devalues the QB, but if we just look at QB in isolation here, 6-2, you'd expect the QBs up here to be higher. When I refer to density, I'm looking at the overall density of the quarterback scoring relative to the other positions. So if you think about 12 starters, it makes up 100%. What's the density of each position? So when it start 12, that density is going to be naturally lower because there's more starters. And it's not like we're adding a quarterback here. You can still only start 2 QBs, which is why sometimes we'll have discussions about QB value when it's a start 9 versus a start 12. It can be the exact same scoring. It can be the exact same WAR. But in a start 9 versus a start 12, the numerator matters a lot more here. Literally, it can be 6-1 with completion bonuses and just quarterback scoring that is absolutely way up here. But in a start 9 versus a start 12, you have to reflect those changes in terms of how you value it. It's going to be more valuable in a start 9 because the percentage is just so much higher. That's the density. So here in a start 12, yes, we do have 6-2. But we also have these other boosts for the other positions, right? We have the extra point per carry. We have the 1.2 PPR. We have the 2 PPR for tight ends. So all of these positions, really, if you notice, it's the receivers that fall behind. And you see here the teal line with tight ends. Like, this is going to naturally be lower because, guess what? You have to start 2. So you really don't start evaluating the flexes for tight ends until you still get to here. And even though it's 2 PPR, let's look at the tight end WAR here. So it's start 3 receivers, so you're at 0.33 for tight end in the first tight end in the flex. Then you go compare that to the receivers. You're over here, lower. And then you're here at running back, lower. So it really is a scarcity-driven market here at tight end. Not so much about the scoring now. The cool thing is, if you do roster construct, and we'll get to his team in a second, if you roster construct with a bunch of tight ends up here, you're still maintaining the flex value. So if you look at these tight ends in here, they're still viable flexes against receivers and running backs, but they're also disrupting this curve, which I'll get rid of this curve. So if you just look at the tight ends here, again, everybody has to start their starters from here and above. So this is the flex line for tight ends down here. But if you hoard in this range, you're actually taking this flex line, you're pushing it down, and you're flattening it even more. So you're removing players from this line, and you're forcing other teams to roster more of them up into this range. So there's going to be a team, if you have 4 of the top 20 tight ends, there's going to be a couple teams that are having to pull from here for their starters. But these guys, relative to all the other players that are up here that other people are starting in their lineups, are even lower. So that is where you see that disruption of the line if you're able to tight end hoard. And we get to Dr. B's team, and we can see that's exactly what he did. He said, second year of the league, and he went tight end heavy out of the startup. Prioritized young receivers, but lacking at QB and lacking at running back. So here's his roster. So roster construction is okay. I could probably get rid of these 2. These are the 2 right here, Tyler Conklin and Josh Wiley. Those are the 2 that you see that are just rostered because they were on the field sometimes last year. Those are 2 guys where they're poison pills. I would probably cut them. If you wanted to keep Conklin just because he was just in a bad spot last year, if you wanted to keep him that maybe he's back on the radar, then fine. But these are probably roster cloggers. Dulcich I like. And then right here, Bowers, Laporta, Kincaid, you have 3 of the top 12. So you're really efficient at tight end. And in fact, unless you can get more tight ends that you can flex, I'm not allocating any more resources to the tight end position, which will come up to the 105 decision here in a second. The other reason I'd cut Wiley and Conklin is simply because you have all of these second and third round picks. You're probably going to be tempted to maybe take at least a tight end. Not saying I want to or have to, but more than likely there's going to be a few picks on the board where the best value in this league is a tight end. And this WAR and this scarcity that has been created in this league, it makes me really wonder how the tight ends are going to be valued. So, Dr. B, the first question I have for you, how is your league going to value tight ends here in this rookie draft? Like, are they going to push any of the I mean, let's just take 8 tight ends. We know there's a tight end 1. We know there's probably a tight end 2, 3, 4. But all the next guys, the guys that are literally just drafted, a guy gets drafted in the 4th and he goes to the Broncos, people will be like, that guy could start. Think of like Gunnar Helm from last year, Mitchell Evans, those types. They were like 4th, 5th round picks. Aronde Gadsden, same thing. Like, will people value those guys and draft them in the early 2nd? Because if all you're going to get is receivers, or all you're going to get is some subpar running backs, I know the running back premium is pretty high, but I'm just curious, like, are these picks a little more valuable than we assume? Because of the fact that the tight end class is intriguing, and it's a format where a ton of people will probably be interested in drafting those types of tight ends. I'm curious what your thought is on that. But I would cut Wiley, I would cut Conklin. You can probably draft one more tight end, but you probably have to decide how you want to play the rest of these picks. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want to go, oh, the league isn't valuing rookie tight ends, right? And then you're tempted with all of these picks. Loveland and Warren went 201 and 204 last year. Man, yeah. That doesn't make me very confident that your league is going to take tight ends higher because of the format. And what I don't want to do if I'm you is draft 5 rookie tight ends. Because you know already that when you get to the 303, 305, 307, 309, if they're tight ends that are like 4th round, 5th round picks, those are probably the best players on the board. Unless it's just RBs on a 53. So I think you only know that. And maybe if you do know that, then maybe I'm willing to pivot off one of these tight ends. Now, the problem is all your tight ends are pretty high end. So it's probably Laporta is the guy to try to shop. Kincaid, I think, is way better than what his value is, so I wouldn't try to shop him. Bowers, it's really impossible to move Bowers in this league unless you're getting 2 elite pieces. But it'll be interesting how you play this, because I could see a team where you go, man, best player available is a tight end, and then another tight end, and then another tight end, and then you have 9 tight ends, which you don't want to do, because I want to address your other issues. So the second thing is, it is best ball, right? And so you can play the volume game at receiver, which is what you've already done. There's probably a cutoff point. Maybe it's Keandre Lambert-Smith. Maybe it's Devon Vele. I mean, Darius Slayton. Like, there's a real... Let's go back to the war here. There's a real flat line. I mean, look at this. Here's wide receiver. This is the end of the starting ranges. But this line in a best ball, considering that it is a week-to-week, it's actually even flatter than what it shows here. Because a player that's in this range might have 4 or 5 weeks where they're scoring over 12 points for a week, 15 points for a week. But you don't know when those are going to come. So the fact that it's 0.38 versus 0.25, that might be the difference in like one usable week. But if they all fire at the same time, then they're not necessarily usable once you hit a certain amount in a given week. Like, you would not want all these receivers from Ayuk, Dobbs, Franklin, Keandre Lambert-Smith, Devon Vele, let's say you add a couple more. Like, you don't want all of them to be in that same range because at some point it's diminishing returns. You kind of have to go for the most efficient, which is probably somewhere around 12 receivers, I would guess here, assuming your tight ends are super strong. Then again, because it's best ball, you can probably shave off a few numbers on here. So maybe that makes you feel a little better about drafting some of those tight ends if you think the market is robust enough. So I think you're good at receiver. You just probably have to make a decision on, again, if receiver's the best player on the board, which it could be at 205 or 212, you really have to decide, like, what's your allocation of receivers versus tight ends. So for me, I'm probably looking at, let's go 18 total, because you have 32-man rosters. Let's go 18. So you're already there at 4 tight ends, and you're probably at 9 receivers. So think about your picks that way. That's probably what's going to be the best player on the board. So if you think you're going to go over that, now we're going to shift to the other 2 positions. So let's address quarterback first. Let's go look at the bottoms, the backups, see what's available. So, I mean, I see guys like Drew Lock on waivers. Okay. I'm not saying you'd play any quarterback on a 2 deep here, but what this does tell me is that I can probably allocate my 4th quarterback spot, and I know you only have technically 1 starter, but let's assume the optimal is 4. I can probably allocate one of those spots to being just backup streamers. Now, my second question for you is, what does that market look like during the season? I know you've been in plenty of best ball leagues where you can give up a future third and get a 3-week run of Davis Mills. Is that the case in your league? Because if so, I would definitely kick a few of these picks to the future. Like 303, 305, if that nets me a future third, and then I know that's my market, then I have no problem doing something like that, where it just basically allows me to stream my fourth quarterback on the market. Then the other conundrum is you don't have a QB2. You do have the 105. I don't know what you could get for the 105, given that's probably receiver range. I am definitely trying to trade for a quarterback. Doesn't have to be an elite one. I would pay the 105 for Baker Mayfield. I would pay the 105 for CJ Stroud, those types. Best ball, 6 point per passing touchdown. You really can't go into the year with not having other options at QB. So 105, given that it's probably a receiver, given that I can dress receiver here with volume and the tight end premium is so high, I'm probably okay just moving 105 for a QB. I don't know what's available, but I want to get a second one. That makes me feel a little better about having like Geno Smith. I know if Geno Smith is going to play, he's probably going to fill in half the year at least as my QB3, and then my QB4 can be a streaming version of 1 or 2 or 3 backups. With your team, I'd probably be willing to roster 2 or 3 backups. I don't want to roster 8 because that's a lot of zeros. But you have Mariota. That's probably one of the higher top 6, top 8 backups. Tyrod Taylor you can cut for now. I have no problem letting him go. But just plan for your QB4 to kind of be a stream version, and maybe even QB3 is that. So allocate these picks. You have a pretty good team, right? Like you have a pretty good built-out roster. I wouldn't say it's the best, but I'd want to set my QBs up a little better just so I know exactly how I'm going to play that. And then we'll get to running back. So last thing with running backs. Clearly in best ball, you're lacking running backs. I'm guessing the elite running backs are very hard to get here because of the 1.2 PPR and the point per carry. So I'm guessing it's like if I wanted to go try to trade for like a James Cook or someone like that, like it's going to cost me even more than the 105. It's going to cost me multiple pieces. You probably have one move if you could split like Sam Laporta for a usable running back plus something else. I'd be fine doing that. But I'm also fine with kind of just fishing in, I'm going to let my running backs be a little weak this year because it feels like the opportunity cost to make them strong is going to be too high in this league. So you have Travion Henderson, you have Spears, you have Sampson. There's probably some running backs you can find along the way that people don't really value. You know the names. Go back to listen to that running back pod that I did. You have a bunch of these middle round picks. James Conner, J.K. Dobbins, guys that are just going to have a role. And if they don't have a role, then they're sunk costs, right? They're not even really worth having if they don't have roles. But can you convert a couple of those mid-round picks to that? So to sum it up, there's a lot going on in this league. I think you know where your roster construction lacks. You identified that you're lacking RBs and QBs. You do have picks, but you just probably want to steer away from trying to fix those needs in the draft. Like, let's just say, hey, my running backs are weak. I'm going to go use a bunch of rookie picks on running backs. And you kind of end up with more guys like you have, like Jarquez Hunter. Like, the risk that you get Jarquez Hunter versus a usable running back at 305 or 303 or 212, it's probably in this class steers more towards I'm going to get the Jarquez Hunter versus a usable RB. I mean, look at Sampson and Hunter. Sampson was going a little higher than Hunter last year, but they're basically the same thing. One looks usable, one doesn't. So I don't want to just shotgun the approach at rookie picks this year and say, oh, I'll fix my running back that way. Probably want to move those to the future, address the other positions, notably quarterback, and try to really play on the margins at running back this year. But it's a pretty good team. It's a team that you're in. Like, you're not going to punt. You're not going to rebuild. Like, it's a team that's still moving upwards. Receivers are great. For best ball, you have 5 really solid receivers. You don't need an elite receiver in best ball, not with the tight end scoring, not with the running back scoring that it is. So I like your construction. I think you just know where you need to kind of supplement the rest of the team and allocate these rookie picks. This is a big year for you. So thank you for the submission, Dr. B. Next up, we are going to get AJ. So AJ's roster is a 12 by 10. get it in the chat. You're welcome, my friend. So, AJ, this is a 12 by 10. I'm going to jump over to his team here. So, 12 by 10. It is 4 minus 2 for quarterback scoring. So, note, going to be completely different than the league we just looked at. 28 roster spots. So, 12 by 10, 28-man rosters, 4 minus 2, 1.75 tight end premium. Describing his league in 3 sentences or less, we have the 104, 105, 112s. Team seems decent but doesn't carry its weight. Want to turn bodies plus picks into a stronger contender. So let's take a look at this bad boy. Scroll down. Always look at this. This is the first thing I look at every league. Just for a mental note, what is the roster allocation here? So we got a quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, a tight end, 2 flexes, and a super flex. So pretty standard 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and a super flex. We've got 18 bench. So exactly what he said. 12 by 10, 28-man rosters. Notice how much lower the tight end number is here. Yes, the roster spots are lower, but it's only 51. So 175, that's probably right for a start run. But you notice every team in the prior league is carrying at least an extra tight end, if not more. Quarterback number right around the same, 62. So for a 28-man roster, 62 is actually pretty high. Because again, like that's an average of 5.5 QBs almost per team. So every team, if you just give 5.1, 5.2 is about the average per team. Every team is allocating more than 15% of their roster spots on QB. And we might think, oh, that's pretty low for this community. But for the most part, when you're talking a random league, it's probably pretty high. Because very, very few people outside of our community play the any quarterback on a 2-deep strategy. So if you have this across the board, there's probably a couple people that have way more than that, and then a few that are a little lower. But that number's pretty average, maybe even a little higher for 28-man rosters. Notice the running back number only 95. That's pretty low. That tells me that without even looking at waivers, there's going to be some running backs on a 53 that are available on waivers. Because the previous league was best ball, and it was far higher than this. Think about that. How many more running backs are zeros in best ball, yet the last league had, I believe it was 109. 14 more running backs rostered, which just doesn't make sense to roster running backs that deep in a best ball league. Scoring, nothing crazy with the bonuses, so let's go up to AJ's team here. Real quick, let's look at the war. So this is the war for, better close out Dr. B's so we don't get into that old one up here. All right, this is the war for AJ's league. So you'll notice quarterback scoring. So this will look higher. That doesn't mean the quarterbacks necessarily are scoring more, but you'll notice at the top, the quarterback war is a little bit higher. It's steeper. So when I'm looking at the density, I'm not necessarily looking at up here. The density for quarterbacks, I'm usually looking more at this middle range. So what does it look like if I have a middle tier QB1 and then a low end QB1, QB2? That's probably the range where the value starts to drop off. Notice how far it declines here. Notice how far it drops when you start getting down into this range. Here, these guys in a 4-2 are going to be much bigger difference makers. And this is also 10 starters, not 12. So you have one of those elite QB. This is the type of league where if you have like Josh Allen, his value is triple what it was in the previous league. Because not only is this steeper, but it's less starters, so that density is higher. And the relative value of these guys is way higher than if you're down here and you're trying to stream from QB2s. So just wanted to highlight that. But it doesn't always tell the story when you're just looking at, like here, you would think that that quarterback density here is way higher, but it isn't necessarily. When you're looking at the number of starters, it's only 10 here. So just wanted to point that out, what it looks different when it's a 4-2. We also don't have the extra RB bonuses here, so you notice this running back line is a lot lower. So even at the high end, it's lower, but then when you start getting down into these flex ranges, it's also lower. So this one isn't that complicated to figure out from a roster construction standpoint. It's very similar to the roster construction series. The only difference is this has 2 less roster spots and 1 less starter. But for all intents and purposes, the roster construction is the same. So let's look at AJ's team. So the first thing I notice is we have too many tight ends. probably just can't afford to carry 3 guys like Otten, Dulcich, and Musgrave. I understand why you had to have them last year, because at the end of the year, Otten, Dulcich, Musgrave, all those guys were starters. We also have the Kittle problem. Like, Kittle is a very tough one in this type of format because it's shallow rosters. For this roster, he's probably in your flex. Like, I know it says his value is higher than Mark Andrews. I don't agree with that. I don't think you can go trade George Kittle for a lot of the tight ends that are tight end 10 through 20. So he's relegated to a flex on your team. And I'm not super confident of him being a better flex than some of these receivers. Like, he's already in this range, but on your roster, he's a flex. So we're kind of weak at tight end. We're kind of weak at receiver at the top. I mean, when G. Will, Higgins, Wand, I mean, the receivers are fine. But when I see a receiver room like this, I'd want to probably be stronger at tight end, especially stronger in the tight end flex. If Kittle was healthy, I'd feel a little bit better. But because he's not, on paper, this team's a lot stronger than it actually really is. You're probably below war average at both of these two positions. And we only have 5 receivers. Now, the good news is we have the 104 and 105. So this is definitely a team where I am taking a shot on a receiver. Hell, I might take 2. Because the other positions are solid. The other positions, I mean, May, Dart, Mayfield, this is one of those classic, we have a QB overage that can be fixed in 2 different ways. So first way is you just stick with, in a shallow league, I already have May, I already have Dart, I have Baker already rostered. Problem is I don't want any of these guys then. I'd also target Anthony Richardson, Kirk Cousins, Marcus Mariota, and Geno Smith. Those would be like 4 of the top 8 quarterbacks in a league where I was punting my QB2 or even my QB3. So we have excess. So this is the place where you have to pull from excess. We don't have any future 27 picks. This is the place where I would be willing to move around the board. This is the place where I'd be looking to liquidate either Dart. Probably Dart would be the guy I would try to move. Because I can live with May, Mayfield, and then these QBs. And the only thing I know that if I keep Richardson, Cousins, Mariota, and Geno are very strong. If you told me I could go in with these 4 and then May and Mayfield, I could live with that QB room. Maybe you move Mayfield. I'd rather have Dart over Mayfield, but it feels like the return for Dart could be double what it was for Baker. And because you're kind of already hedging with 3 or 4 of the better, quote-unquote, backup or reserve QBs, the team's pretty strong here, regardless of which move you do. Now, it's going to be hard to move Richardson. It's going to be hard to move Cousins. It's going to be hard to move Geno. That's the problem. Now, these guys have little value. The value that they currently have is to your team. So Russell Wilson can go, but I would probably try to move one of these. Running backs are great. I mean, Bucky, Saquon, Chuba Hubbard, David Montgomery, Vidal. Like, I'm good. This isn't an RB premium. I'm willing to backfill with a few others, but I probably only need 8 or 9 running backs on this team, especially if I'm going to move one of these QBs. I'm going to want to carry a couple extra receiver quarterbacks as well. So maybe this goes up to 8. This is at 8 or 9, and then the rest go to these 2 positions. But you're already pretty good. I mean, Vidal, Devin Neal as your running back 5 and 6. Maybe you try to get 1 or 2 more. You also have a bunch of these mid-round picks. I would be moving probably 205, 207. Can I get somebody else in the Chuba Hubbard range? Can I get... I don't need to go get a higher-end running back. I can live with what I have. This is a nicely set up running back room. I just need more guys probably in this range. Or a little bit higher if I can get them. Can I get 2 of those? Can I go get a Javonte Williams? Can I go get a Tajay Spears? Like, guys like that. I know those guys aren't exactly the same, but going and getting like 2 more of those without paying first, that's the key. That's what I'm trying to do. And then we focus our draft plan on how can I move some of these picks to the future. Like, we already know how many players can we cut on here. Russell Wilson, probably Rocket Sanders, Chris Brooks, LaQuint Allen, Nick Chubb, and then probably 2 of these tight ends. I like Dulcich, but I just don't want to carry 4 tight ends. But we don't really have the roster room in 12 by 10, 28-man rosters to make all these picks and to have a couple roster spots for waivers. So we have excess. We need to kick a few of these to the future, even if they're 28, even if they're thirds. this type of roster, the way that it's built, especially if you're going to move one of these QBs, you want to lean into the fact that next year we already have 2 seconds. Let's say I can get to 3 seconds, 3/3. I can probably get through the year with living in this QB range, right? Baker goes down, one of these guys isn't playing, or I just need another player in this range. That's why you acquire those picks. And then I'm probably having to fade one of these two positions. The good news is you have the 104 and the 105. If this was like the 107 and the 108, you're in no man's land. You're probably going to be able to take 2 receivers. And you're just going to be weaker at tight end, which is why I want to kind of slim down at tight end as well. I'll go with Andrews. I'll go with Otten. Kittle. I mean, can I package Kittle in a deal? Probably not. So you're probably rolling with 3 tight ends. You're going to have to bump this up most likely to 8 or 9 receivers, unless the tight end value is just so much higher. Can you go buy a tight end for the 205? Can you send a second and a third and go buy a tight end? I don't know. I don't know who that might be or what that might look like. But Andrews would be one of the ones I'd be willing to target. And you already have him. So unless you can kind of supplement getting one more tight end, I'm probably looking at adding a couple receivers. Maybe you draft 1 tight end. But you got to kick a lot of these picks to the future. So I hope that helps, AJ. This is a good team. Like, I know exactly what you mean. Team seems decent, but doesn't carry its weight. Yeah, I think the formation of how this team is structured is great. Just comes down to kind of grinding these edges, and some of these pieces can be moved on from because the season is over and we're going into the offseason. So hopefully that helps. Appreciate the submission. All right, next up, we have Sacramento Kingpin. No, Sacramento Kingpin, you did not miss your roster. We are 2 in, and I'm hitting you now. So this is a 10 by 9. So again, I didn't purposely pick this, but I think it'll be cool to look at a 10-teamer and how it differs in construction. So 10-teamer, here's what he says about his roster. So 10 by 9, 31-man rosters. I hit on that last week. I don't know if you heard the episode last week, but too many roster spots, my friend. Too many roster spots. 31 is way too many in a 10 by 9. I mean, you're rostering just stuff that has no purpose. I mean, I'm looking at this team, and guys like Jalen Coker, Josh Downs, I mean, they're just useless. Torrey Horton, they're nice on paper, but when you realize it's 10 by 9 and it's 31-man rosters, we'll talk about kind of how to address that. But if I was this league, I would put a rule change submission out there. Can we cut 10 roster spots? No joke. Cut it down to 21. Cut it down to 22, 23. And you'll see the market completely open up. So anyway, Superflex, PPR, no tight end premium. 1 and done in the playoffs last year after winning back-to-back titles. Homish league, which mixed activity. Some barely trade, others trade a lot. Once insight into the future direction of the roster. So, no premiums. This is very, very vanilla. So we'll go over, I mean, my goodness. Look at the tight end war. Look at how little it matters. Like, truthfully, it matters so little that unless you literally have, like, one of the top 2 or 3 tight ends, even tight end 5 is in a positional advantage over these guys. Now, because it's 10 by 9, yes, they're very low scoring relative to the other positions, but it's still 10 by 9. So relative to everybody else, let's assume everybody else is down here. Even if you're up here, you're still only getting about 0.4, 0.3 better than the rest of the league. But still, that goes a long way, considering that if you accept that you're down here, it just means you have to be a little bit better at the other 8 spots. So we have Sam Laporta. I mean, again, we have Laporta. He probably falls in this range, right? He's probably down in here. He's such a little advantage. I have no clue what the tight end market is here, but he's such a small advantage that you're almost better off if you could move him with something else just to package it for something with higher upside value in the future, even a 28 first. I know you don't have a 28 first, but I would have no hesitation trading Sam Laporta for anything that looks like a first in either 27 or 28. Probably not 27 because you've literally already cornered the market on those. But I just don't need him. I don't need him to win. Now, you do have Jared Goff, so maybe that elevates him a tiny bit because you have the stack. typically if I'm in a league like this with no premium, shallow rosters, and I'm stuck in the middle with somebody like Laporta, if I have Goff, at least it makes sense with that pairing. So if you don't want to move him, I understand. But I'd be totally fine just living with what I have between Mason, Taylor, Gunnar, Helm, and Dalton Schultz. And it sounds terrible, but you're just basically admitting, hey, my tight end's going to be weak. I'm going to have to make it up at other positions. So, a couple notes here. There's no premiums. Forgot to look at the pie chart. See if it's 2 or 3 receivers. So it's 3 receivers. So you're really looking at, let's get rid of quarterbacks, let's get rid of tight ends. The only flex positions that matter are running back and receiver. You're looking at the receivers once you get to about here and below. And then you're looking at the running backs when you get to about here and below. So it's a slight edge to running back, and that's just because it's a 10 team with shallow rosters. So it's a 10 team, meaning that running back 3 is going to be slightly better than the receiver in the flex, but there's just going to be more receivers to the point where this is probably what a lot of rosters look like at receiver. I mean, this is just disgusting. Parker Washington, Khalil Shakir, and Josh Downs are all good receivers. They're all far outside of the flex range in a league like this, or the optimal flex range. Then there's 113 receivers. So that's just a product of there being way too many roster spots. The average team is carrying 11.3 receivers. That's crazy. So a lot of teams probably look like this. What that tells me, this position here is entirely devalued. Entirely. I would rather have Ramondre Stevenson than I would any of these receivers. Simply because there's more of a likelihood that he's going to need to fill in up here. But more importantly, running backs that get to startable range, like RB20, let's just look at RB25. That's probably where Ramondre is on weeks where he's getting touches. You know, he's not benched, but he's not obviously a top 10 guy. Travion Henderson is still there. So here's Ramondre, right? But you're probably going to know when you're going to start him, more likely than all of these receivers. This is where Parker Washington, Josh Downs, Khalil Shakir, Jalen Coker, Torrey, they're all here, and it goes all the way past 50. So, like, those are very much devalued. These guys are very much more valued. Woody Marks, Ramondre Stevenson, Jalen Warren, etc. So, I'm curious at how cheaply you could convert some of these to that. And I'm guessing on waivers, there's not a lot available. Okay, Michael Carter, Kendre Miller. Interesting. Only 80 running backs rostered. Tells me the league values it completely the opposite of what I'm saying. The total opposite. That's only 8 running backs per team, yet 11.3 receivers per team. You said you tried to add 2 more teams to the league, but the league said no. Okay. I mean, listen, these are more nuances of things that would just be my opinion. I wouldn't want as many teams, but I think from the standpoint of how you could approach your roster compared to everybody else's, this range is going to be more valuable. This range is way less valuable, and your league is currently doing it the opposite of that. They're rostering more of these receivers and less of these guys. So I don't know what you can convert. You do have the 210. I mean, here's the thing. Your team is pretty good. You have Lamar, you have Bijan, you have Achane, you have CD, you have Tet McMillan. I mean, your starting lineup is maybe not the best in the league, but it's close. Top 3, top 4, even with it being a 10 team. So I think it's diminishing returns of how good you can make your team right now. Certainly you have 527 firsts. I haven't looked at those. I don't have time to go through each one, but I assume a couple of these firsts are from teams that are worse than you. Teams that potentially could be top 2, top 3, top 4. So you have an embarrassment of riches. You could easily go try to buy another hammer. You could easily go upgrade from Jared Goff. You'd probably have to overpay relative to the format, but you could do it. And it wouldn't set you back so much that you're like, oh man, I don't have enough for the future. But also understanding that you don't need an elite receiver. You don't need an elite receiver. In fact, elite receiver would probably be the last thing I'd be trying to buy here. I would be probably trying to buy a better quarterback. I'd probably be trying to get another running back in between Achane and Javonte. Receivers are sexy, but if I could get James Cook If I could go get Chase Brown, I'd rather have that than go spend on Nico Collins. I mean, sure, if you're getting Jamar Chase or JSN or Puka, fine. Like you don't need to add another Ted McMillan, Emeka Egbuka, Nico Collins, Garrett Wilson. You don't need those guys. Sure, I would trade for one of those guys for a random first. But I'm guessing in your league, if you went and tried to get Chris Olave, they're going to want a 27 first and something else. You just don't need to do that. You just don't need to do that. I mean, look at this war. You need to be really right that receiver you're trading for is going to be up here. If they're down here, it's so flat, which devalues a lot of these guys, especially if you already have a stable of enough of these guys to get by, which you do. I mean, you have Waddle and you have McLaurin. Sure, you could get one more. You're probably going to end up with one more receiver. But even on a weekly basis, guys like Washington, Shakir, and Downs, like they're not here for a season, but they're not that much different than the wide receiver 18 in a week versus the wide receiver 30. Their ranges of outcomes in most of the weeks is the same. So you just don't need an elite receiver. Now, if you're talking elite, fine. But that wouldn't stop me from going to add another quad. I mean, if you can go get the equivalent to Chris Olave at running back or a quarterback upgrade, I'm doing that probably more likely than I am paying for the wide receiver name. Because, dude, you have 527 first. I don't know how many of these project to be good, but if like one or two of them has a shot at being the 101, like you're just never going to have a problem finding receivers. And I'm guessing if you went and tried to get like Puka, it would cost you like 3 of these picks. And sure, if you want to pull the trigger, that's just a huge move, right? That's really pushing that flexibility in when you still do have, I mean, let's be real, you still do have a bit of a hole at tight end, which we've accepted is okay. And then this Goff in a 4-2, like Goff probably isn't the quarterback I would necessarily be chasing. I think it was 4-2, right? No, 4-1. So like Goff's just probably not the QB I'm chasing, but if you're really going to try to get an upgrade, you have to use Goff in the deal. And I think that's going to be the issue for most people. Is like, hey, I really want to get your Justin Herbert. And they're like, sure, I'll give you Justin Herbert for 2 firsts. Fine, but I don't want to give up 2 firsts and a 10-teamer for a QB unless it is like moving up to the Lamar Jackson tier. And part of the caveat is like, I want Jared Goff to count in that trade. And if I'm trading away a quarterback, I don't even want Jared Goff back. Not in a 10-by-9 like this. So you're kind of stuck at QB and at tight end unless you're willing to go pay through the nose. And I'd probably rather just buy running back. So anyway, pretty good roster. I mean, you've done a great job accumulating the picks. This team is going to be in the playoffs. It's probably got a really good shot at being in the Final Four. And then it's just how do things line up in that given week. So look at the RB market would be my advice. It feels like it's a little bit softer compared to the receivers based on how people are roster constructing. So thank you, Sacramento Kingpin, for the submission. All right, next up, we got a doozy. We got Big Diaz Energy, and there is never a league from Big Diaz Energy that has anything basic to it. So let's see what we got here. All right. So we have a 12-by-11. This is a Empire League, 12-by-11, 30-man rosters. Let's get over to it here. Boom. I'll make sure we're... Oh, yeah, we're right here. All right. 12-by-11, 30-man rosters, Empire League. It is 0.1 point per carry for both running backs and quarterbacks. It is 0.2 per first down for QBs, and it's 0.5 for everybody else. An extra 0.5 for... Or no. 0.5 PPR for running backs, so tiered PPR. 0.5, 1, and 2 for running backs, receivers, and tight ends. And then going down, looking at the specifics, 12-by-11, quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, a tight end, 3 flexes, a super flex. There's the 19 bench. Notice that number, 72 QBs rostered, 6 per team, so way higher than we've seen. This is pretty typical to see a number in the high 60s or 70s. So the streaming QB is completely out here. And I say that because when you see this number this high, there's probably more teams in the league in general that are valuing backup QBs, which means trying to get them from somebody else's roster, there's going to be a reserve price. When something's free and it gives you a tiny little value back, that's better than you having to pay that tiny little value just to get it off somebody's team. Even though the people that are rostering the extra QBs, they may not even know exactly why they're doing it. They just do it. So down here, looking at the scoring, it's 6 minus 3 for passing touchdowns. Okay. So 6 minus 3. Nothing else really crazy. The premiums check out. So, okay. All right. So here's what Diaz says about his team. So 7 teams make the playoffs. So that's kind of cool. 7 out of 12 make the playoffs. And there's only one bye. So basically the semifinals are 2 versus 7, 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5, and then you have to get number 1 to get a bye. So kind of like that. Won the Empire Prop previously. Then the league reset. The restart went poorly for me. Tried the 2 elite QB build, got hit by injuries, and bad leverage bets for firsts. Sold down to Chase 101 and barely got it. So we barely got the 101 by, 0.36 potential points. That's pretty crazy. But anyway, we have the 101. So here's the team. 12 by 11, 30-man rosters. Let's look at the war here real quick. Actually, let me close out this previous one so you don't get it confused. Okay. So 6 minus 3, pretty interesting with the quarterback scoring here. Pretty interesting on the quarterback scoring. So the minus 3 for interceptions, if you really think about how interceptions work, even the bad quarterbacks are still going to probably throw, 10, 12, 15 interceptions, somewhere in that 10 to 15 range. I mean, there might be some that are really, really bad and are 15 plus. But if you think about that, it's only an extra point relative to a 6 minus 2. And it's only really getting applied on maybe 8 to 16 plays per game per year. And so the 6 point per passing touchdown really kind of neutralizes that quite a bit. So even 6 minus 2, 6 minus 3, I don't really look at the interceptions as that detrimental. It's more when it's 4 minus 2 or it's 5 minus 3. I've seen some 5 minus 3s. I mean, that's where it's really the percentage above is going to be a little more penalizing here. So I'm not really that concerned about the QB scoring. I still assume it's a QB premium, especially with the quarterback first down bonuses, 0.2 for quarterback first downs. So if you think about the average quarterback might have 300 completions in a year. And what's the percentage of those that go for first downs? I mean, that bonus alone is really almost nullifying all of the interception negative points across the year. So looking at the other positions, we get rid of QBs. So we know it's tiered PPR. Tight end premium, you can see you're getting down into this range at tight ends. You're still flex worthy here, right? You're still at 0.5 WAR for tight ends all the way to tight end 20. And you're comparing those guys to these receivers right here. Tight ends are better flexes than receivers, just like we talked about with the first team. If you have multiple tight ends in here that you're flexing, it actually changes this curve for the rest of the league. And it impacts the receivers that are in this range, makes them a little more devalued. You need enough of them, but everybody has to start 3. So you're really getting down into this range where people are starting to flex receivers, and it just makes it more advantageous to have multiple tight ends. So let's take a look at his roster. So we punted tight end, apparently, in this league because we have A.J. Barner, Terrence Ferguson, Elijah Arroyo, Jake Tunges. So we're very weak at tight end, which means we're the ones that are probably being impacted by other teams that are roster constructing with heavier tight end builds. So we know we're probably going to have to roster a couple more here. Now, the good news is you have some young ones. I think there's a chance that any of these 3, maybe even Tunges in there, depending on Kittle, could jump into that top 20. I mean, Barner was almost there this year. So I'm not giving up on the tight end room, but you're probably going to have to stay with the number that you have. I would explore maybe 107. What type of tight end could 107 get for me? This feels like the draft where no man's land. Maybe that's the best tight end in the draft if they fall to 107, but I'm just kind of curious what you could maybe get at tight end if you were to trade the 107 specifically. Could you combine that with something else maybe? Who knows? Receivers. Receiver room's fine. Like, I hate to see receiver rooms with the tight end room like this because you're basically punting both positions, which means your volume has to increase at both. And when you know that your numbers have to be a little bit higher at both, and then I look at your quarterback build, and you're also playing the any quarterback on a 2 deep strategy, this is why sometimes it's hard for people to fathom, well, how can I play any quarterback on 2 deep and the any RB on a 53 and be willing to kind of stream a couple of my receivers and tight ends as well? You can't. You can't play volume at all of them. Like, you can't play volume at all 4 positions. At some point, you have to get more efficient. At some point, at least one of these positions has to be dialed in. And I would recommend, with what you have right here at quarterback, this is a classic. I'm selling Malik Willis when he becomes a starter. I mean, Jalen Hurts, and these backups is exactly how I would want to construct. All of these backups are good. Literally every one of these backups is good. Plus, you have Milroe and Shador. This is a classic. I'm selling Malik Willis for what I can get. 28 first. If he becomes a starter, Malik Willis is gone. Because on the contrary, if let's say Malik Willis signs a 3-year deal. I know everybody thinks he's going to get a 2-year deal, but I tend to think he gets probably something like 3 for 80, 3 for 90, something like that. If he gets that, you're probably looking at a 2-year window at least with him. The issue is now you have all these QBs here that are basically nuked by Malik Willis being your QB3. So the market opens up for all of these, but there's not going to be a market for any of them, most likely. So this is a classic. I'm selling Willis. I don't even care where I upgrade because I can upgrade everywhere. My running backs are weak. My tight ends are weak. My receivers are fine, but you could use another receiver probably just to fill one of these gaps, another McLaurin, Jaden Higgins, Xavier Worthy type, because you don't have enough flexes right now. Like, you have just weak flexes when you're putting receivers and tight ends in your flexes. So it's really just convert Malik Willis to any value that I can get. You are adding Jeremiah Love. You do have the 105. You are going to add another receiver. So that's why 107 is probably that trigger pick. Malik Willis is probably the trigger pick. You're pushing any of these picks to the future that you can, or combining them with Willis or the 107 to see what you can get. But I'd be willing just to add 2 players to this team, plus Jeremiah Love, plus the 105. And take your chances, right? You're going to have Daniels, Hurts, Jeremiah Love, and you're going to have probably enough volume to get by. Is it the best team in the league? No. Is it a team that I expect to contend this year? Probably not. But you also have a 27 first in the bag, an extra one. You could always split Daniels or Hurts if the right deal comes up. I feel a little better about this quarterback build if I have those 2, but for some reason, if I can't get the deal for Willis, maybe a tear down off of Daniels or Hurts works. And then I let time kind of play my market out a little bit and see what else comes up over the summer. But I like the build. Like, this team, I know you are pretty diligent about structuring your teams. This team has good structure. It's just simply you just need better players at the wide receiver and the tight end spot. And then more running backs. Like, you obviously don't have enough running backs to fill out the running back room that you would want. Like, you're adding Love, which makes it nice to have like Spears and Caleb Johnson and Ollie Gordon, but you probably need another 1 or 2 guys. This is a league where if I can get the 201 and move that for an RB, can I get Javonte Williams for the 201? Can I get somebody like that? Maybe not Javonte because he signed, but can I get that type of RB just to know that I have them there? Can I get 2 running backs? I think another one is I don't want to give up the 201 for Ramondre Stevenson, but if I could get him and Rico Dowdle, I would do that. And the 201 feels like the perfect pick that I don't need to make it. I don't need to make the 201 in this league. I don't need to be tempted to take another tight end. I don't need to add another receiver. Because, I mean, you even have like Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, even maybe Hollywood Brown. Like, those guys aren't guys you would cut. But it's the classic. If I have Keenan Allen on my team, I have to have a place to use him if he's what he was last year or the year before. It's not going to feel great. You can't even really forecast it. But he's on my roster. He's useless. He's useless to any other team in a trade. So I have to say, I have him. I'm probably going to bet that I can use him. So I have to set myself up to where I can use him, or at least based on my construction, he's potentially usable. But if you added like 3 receivers on this team, now you're like, Keenan Allen's my wide receiver 10. Well, he's worth nothing, though. He's worth nothing on the market. But he's also worth nothing to your team. So you've neutralized him even further. So good team, Diaz. You know how to build out. You know how to build out a team like this. Your construction is good. I think you have to make a decision at quarterback how you want to play it. Make a decision what you can get for 107, 201, these picks. Team's not dead in the water, though. I could see this being a sneaky team that, if you have good health at quarterback especially, this team could be in the mix next year. Maybe you didn't expect it. All right, last team. So this is the first one that we had to push all the way back. Inky's Revenge. This is you. So thank you for being patient. So here's what we got. We got another 10-teamer. So this is a 10 by 11. It is total roster spots, 32. I honestly didn't even look at this, but same things I said earlier about the prior team. 10 by 11, so a little bit deeper. Say that. At least with 11 starters, you can justify the roster spots being a little bit higher, but still not 32. You know, again, I'm right around the 40% range. So with 11 starters, I want this to be more like 26-man rosters-ish. 27, 26, 27. It's probably the sweet spot. 10-teamer maybe dials that back a little bit. Maybe it's more like 24, 25, but definitely can't be 32. And I guess actually now that I read it's 4 IR, so it's really 28. So maybe only over a little bit. I'd probably put it down to like 24, 25, but we're arguing semantics there. It's only a couple spots. So 10 by 11, it is 6 point per passing touchdown. It is 0.5 tight end premium. Second place finisher in 25, position to be a top team again in 26. Don't have much extra flexibility. Wondering if any moves are needed. So let's go down, look at the settings. Pie chart. Immediately I can see this is a start 1, 2, 2, 1, 4 flexes, and a super flex. So first thing to highlight here is this. Start 2 receivers, 2 running backs. So we go up to the war. Get rid of QB for a second. We already know in a tight end 1.5 premium 10-teamer, tight end's going to matter very little. Tight end is not flexible. Only tight ends that are flexible are probably up in this range. So you really have to have 2 of the top 6, 2 of the top 8 to even dent the flexes. But that's an even bigger discrepancy now because the fact we only have to start 2 receivers. So really in the flex, the tight end is chasing any non-top 24 or top 24 running back or 24 receiver. So right here, you're just not close. Like you get down into here or top 20, I should say, because it's a 10-teamer, so it's even higher. You get down into here, the tight end's just not going to keep up. And let's just humor me and see where the tight end hit the flexes here. So here's the first flex at receiver, 0.64. Yeah, basically right here. So you'd have to have 2 top 7 or better tight ends for them to even be a viable flex. Because even here, they start to drop off to where only probably the top 10 tight ends would fit anywhere in the flexes. And we're extending the flexes all the way down to here because there's 4 flexes. So you're extending the receivers and running backs all the way down. And remember with running backs, you can't just look at like RB war value here at RB 40 because it'll say 0, right? But that's because you're only starting 20 per league. So on a season-long basis, the RB 40 isn't the RB 40 on a week-to-week basis. The scoring is much different. The distribution for receivers and running back scoring, it's obviously different from week to week. Whereas a receiver can average 9 points per game for the season, but not a lot of their games are going to be above 12, and not a lot of their games are going to be below 5. So the 9 is more of a true reflection of what they actually are. Running backs, you may have guys that score very little, but then you'll have backups that get 3 starts, and for the week, they're up here. For the season, they're down here. You know, think of like the Michael Carter from the last couple of years. Michael Carter started like 4 games the last 2 years, but he's a negative WAR player. But the games where he's negative WAR, like he's not even on the depth chart. So like he's really not in here, even though on a weekly basis, his WAR is getting dragged down because he had 12 games where he didn't even play. But when he played, he's up here. Receivers don't work like that. It's not like, oh, this week, this receiver, when he starts, he's going to be top 24. But then this week he's not starting, so he's just not even in the top 60. So hopefully people understand. You can't just look at these and go, oh, receiver's better. Not really. You still want to have enough running backs that can have paths to get in here on a weekly basis. So let's go to his team. Oh, let's look at the inefficiencies. So only 93 receivers here. 80 running backs. Okay, so that ratio isn't as high as I thought it would be. 50 QBs, that's way too high. Way too high in the league. And when you see 50 in a 10-teamer, so what you'll notice is like you have guys like Joe Milton on waivers. If I see like Joe Milton or those types of names on waivers, then I don't value Joe Flacco, Will Howard, Riley. I mean, all these guys are useless if Joe Milton's on waivers. So those are some easy moves that you can make, just freeing up roster spots with some of those backups. Like they're worth nothing when Joe Milton's on waivers, unless they're starting and you need them. But I'm not hoarding them. Like I don't need to carry 8 quarterbacks on a team like this. Yes, the Michael Carter quota. Got to get one in every week. So your receivers, your quarterbacks are fine. It is 6-point per passing touchdown league, so surprisingly, I'm kind of fine with Burrow and Stafford. This would be a league where I would target getting a third quarterback. Can I get C.J. Stroud on this team? I don't know what he would cost. But if I could get a third QB, and it can be a pocket passer, can I get Stroud? Can I get Dak? Can I get somebody like that? Can I get Goff? And if I can pay very little because it's a 10 team and those guys on paper don't have a lot of quote-unquote dynasty value, like I would feel totally fine giving up something of use for one of those guys. And you have plenty of excess at your skill players. So let's look at the skill players. So just maybe Rodgers counts as that. Can I get a fourth? And then it allows me to cut these QBs, the dead weight. And I'm going with 3 or 4 QBs. And I'm a little more liberal with who I want in a 6-point per passing touchdown league. So 4 for the quarterback construction is probably best. Tight ends, I mean, you're taking a bath at tight end, but also tight end doesn't matter here. So if you have to stream, probably just roll with Kelsey and Kittle. Maybe you keep a third, seeing if Kelsey doesn't play or Kittle starts on PUP, but like I only need 3 tight ends. Pick between Parkinson and Tunges. Maybe don't do that right now, but when it gets closer to the season, I'm not carrying these types of tight ends. So for now, it's fine. You're not on a roster crunch because you got 28-man rosters, but this probably number has to be down to 2 or 3. And Kittle and Kelsey, like if I know both of those guys are playing in week 1, that's my tight end room. I'll live with the results because I'm already there. Trying to trade them, it's not going to make sense. You're going to get nothing. As bad as people think those guys are, they're still both, even if Kittle comes back 75% what he was, they're still both top 15 tight ends. And that's right around in that range where you would just platoon both of them. But what I don't want to do is carry Jake Tonjes on my bench because I don't think Kittle's healthy. Kittle's playing, he's there, not Jake Tonjes. So cut this down to 2, so you're probably looking at 4 quarterbacks, 2 tight ends. That's probably the most efficient. If you have to go a little higher at tight end because of the offseason, then fine. Keandre Lambert-Smith can go. Receivers are beautifully dialed in. I mean, you can't ask for a better receiver room. I mean, you asked if any moves can be made. I mean, sure, we're talking flipping Neighbors if you're worried about his injury. Flipping A.J. Brown if you think you can get truly what his price could be worth if he changes teams. If he doesn't change teams, you're probably stuck with him. But, I mean, this is a great receiver room. I mean, you literally have a top 2 or 3 receiver in Chase, maybe the best one. A top 8 receiver in London. George Pickens, who's probably the most available elite receiver out there. And then, Malik Neighbors, who most people still value top 5. And then A.J. Brown is your wide receiver 5, your third flex. I mean, this is beautifully dialed in. Then you look at the running backs, and you still have Gibbs, Genty, James Cook, Chase Brown. And then you've backfilled with Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle, Brian Robinson, Devin Neal. I mean, that's going to be my focus. That's my backfill focus. If I can convert a few of these roster spots, let's see what's available. I mean, Keaton Mitchell. Oh, Michael Carter. You got to pick up Michael Carter. Michael Carter, Keaton Mitchell. Both those guys I'm absolutely picking up. When I see guys like Pat Freiermuth and Mike Gesicki on waivers, that just reiterates why I'm not rostering Colby Parkinson or Jake Tonjes. So my roster construction is actually going to look more like 4 dialed-in QBs. These 5 receivers are just set and forget. That is the value of having 5 receivers this good. You don't need to mess with anybody else. And I'm focusing almost all my other resources on running back, which means you have probably a move or two where you could split. Now, you already have an extra 27 first, too. So you have that bullet in the chamber that you can still fire later if you want. So I'm gonna be truthful with you. I don't think you need to make a lot of moves here. The only move I would really think about making is if you're really trying to just preserve my team, because you're literally one of the 2 or 3 best teams already. This draft isn't going to change that. I know you don't have any draft capital, but this draft isn't going to change any of that. The only move I'd make is, can I split Malik Neighbors? Can I split him? Can I split Malik Neighbors? Maybe I could split Drake London. Those would be the 2 that I could consider splitting. But a Malik Neighbors in this kind of format looks like, can I split Malik Neighbors for Nico Collins and a 27 first? Something like that, where I look at the short-term receiver production, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Ted McMillan, all of those names. And that's just a pure, I don't think Neighbors, even though he's wide receiver 5 or 6 in Dynasty, I don't expect him to project higher than a lot of those other wide receiver 8 through 15 guys for the season. Like, that's the only move that I'm like could push you forward even more, because it would give you another 27 first. And again, if you're trading away, let's assume Neighbors is in here. Let's get rid of the tight ends and the running backs. Let's assume Neighbors kind of projects to be in this range, which I think is fair given his injury. Let's say he projects to be in here. On your roster, you have 2 other guys that are up here. Hell, if Pickens is what he was, he's better than Neighbors. And then you have A.J. Brown. I mean, you could argue Neighbors next year might project to be your worst receiver, which makes that trade even more beneficial to you, because you're really just trading from the flex range, right? Maybe you have a higher floor and a little higher ceiling as Neighbors gets healthy, but you're really just trading from this range already relative to your roster, which I've already talked about really isn't that scarce of a range. So if you can get a 27 first and another receiver that's also in here for Neighbors, I'm doing that. And I know that might seem counterintuitive in a 10-teamer, but again, it's about what you can do down the road. It's about, I have 3 picks. I'd get an extra first. You said one of the picks projects to be top 4. That's where I really can go make a huge move later. And I hate paying for quarterbacks in a 10-teamer. You may need to continue to fortify the QB room. And I know 10-teamers, I don't want to draft quarterbacks high in the rookie draft, but if there is a draft where there's options at QB that can be had at the 110, 19, 18, 17, which is probably where one of these picks falls if you end up with 3, next year's class is still the one where you go, well, I really don't want to take a QB because it's only a 10-teamer, but if you're going to allow the next version of CJ Stroud to fall at me to 1-9, sure, I'll just take them because it's going to be a need. So hopefully that helps. Got an interesting mix today of the 5 teams. Again, if you want your roster rescued, join the Discord, patreon.com/allgas or ddfantasyfootball.com. Both get you in the door for the Discord. Read up on the perks. If you have any questions about the difference of the 2, let me know. And if you want a formal roster review, you can purchase one on the website at ddfantasyfootball.com. So this was Roster Rescue Episode 3. Appreciate everybody that tapped in today, jumped into the Discord, submitted their teams. I'm going to try to do these once a week because we have so many submissions. So probably next weekend, there will be combine coverage coming up next weekend. So maybe I'll record it in the week, but I'll let everybody know. For those watching on YouTube, become part of the community. You get this kind of conversation all day, 24/7, 365. So thank you, and good luck with some of these moves, all the teams that we reviewed. Thanks.